The moment unfolding now carries the weight of something far greater than a simple turn of the calendar. It arrives quietly yet firmly, as if the fabric of reality has decided to shift in plain sight, though only a few sense its true scale. This span of days, stretching from early to mid-August, is not the product of coincidence. Its rhythm feels deliberate, almost engineered, as though unseen architects have aligned conditions in a way that no ordinary week could hold. The pulse of this time beats differently, inviting reflection on whether this alignment is meant to pass unnoticed or to awaken those attuned to its undercurrents. What stands before the present moment resembles not a path but a labyrinth, its walls invisible, yet the turnings are felt in the bones. The air itself seems tuned to a frequency that demands attention, neither harsh nor gentle, but intentional. It doesn't merely pass by, it studies, measuring the steps taken within it. Movement here is not about destination but about resonance, whether each choice harmonizes with an inner compass or drifts into noise. And in the stillness between movements, a subtle awareness arises. The design is as much about the traveler as it is about the journey. This span does not ask for performance under an audience's gaze. It asks for fidelity to one's own trajectory. Time here is compressed in such a way that moments are not easily replaced. Whatever is chosen or released now will ripple far into the unfolding year, shaping what remains and what is left behind. There is a quiet strangeness in knowing that the significance of these days is veiled for most, yet its imprint will mark them regardless. Can the shape of a year be altered by a single week? It seems this one is prepared to answer. Subscribe now to be the first to receive new content and grow this journey together. The weight pressing in now is not merely emotional tension, but something akin to a gravitational pull of the unseen. The sensation does not swell gradually. It leans in, as though some threshold is on the verge of giving way. Around the 8th of August, a rare alignment reaches full potency, acting as both a lens and a magnifier for thought, emotion, and will. This year, that opening is not merely ajar. It is a light, amplifying whatever is given to it, whether that be clarity or confusion. And just as the crescendo seems to peak, another surge arrives without pause, compressing experience until every choice feels sharpened to a fine edge. This is why silence can feel heavy, and motion can feel urgent, even when no visible change has yet occurred. Something stirs in these days that doesn't shout for attention, yet moves like a quiet undercurrent deciding the shape of what's ahead. The turning point is not somewhere far off, it is here, weaving itself into moments so small they barely register. Beneath the noise, three distinct currents are drawing people in different directions, each without fanfare, each without waiting for consent. From the earliest hour of this span to its final evening, the subtle leanings of thought and action are already forming a pattern that will be walked long after the week itself fades. It will not present itself as a grand choice beneath a blazing sky. Instead, it slips in through the ordinary, a message answered against better judgment, a truth left unattended under the promise of dealing with it another time. The shift hides in these exchanges, invisible to anyone expecting a dramatic sign. Real change rarely arrives with ceremony. It breathes quietly in the spaces where permission is given to postpone, to soften, to drift. How many of these moments have already been agreed to without even realizing? The energy moving through this span does more than mirror thought, it magnifies it. An idle acceptance becomes a binding direction, as though every casual nod seals something deeper in place. Avoidance does not suspend a matter in midair. It anchors it to the path, where it continues to shape the journey in silence. For those attuned to such shifts, the weight has already begun to press in. Can a single unspoken agreement bend the arc of an entire season? Some will choose nothing at all, slipping into the comfort of routines that make the days blend together. The surrender will be dressed as calm acceptance, yet beneath it lies a slow erosion of will. Others will wrap their avoidance in the language of transcendence, speaking of light and liberation while quietly sidestepping the truths that demand engagement. And then there are those who will remain with what is raw, staying present in discomfort without turning away, even when it leaves them stripped bare. They may tremble, doubt, and question, yet their sight will sharpen beyond the reach of illusion. Once something is seen in that clarity, it cannot be unseen. The path ahead is not announced, it is chosen through the sum of what is done, not the comfort of what is intended. When the surroundings sway in sudden bursts, strength is found not in matching their pace but in holding a steady center. That steadiness is not a refusal to engage with the world, nor is it an attempt to mold it into order. It is the choice to remain anchored while the currents shift around it. In moments like these, there is no demand to raise a voice or step into the spotlight, only to deepen the roots in the ground beneath, allowing chaos to move as it will without uprooting the core. Those who remain unmoved in this way begin to radiate a quiet force that draws others in without announcement. They do not advertise composure or insist upon their place. Instead, they allow their presence to speak in subtler tones. Without lifting a hand, they become reference points in the storm, places where others instinctively pause to regain their balance. This calm is not fragile. It is a still pool that reflects the truth more clearly for those who wander close enough to look. In such an atmosphere, stillness becomes a point of convergence rather than retreat. Without reaching, opportunities begin to drift toward it. People gravitate to the sense of safety it offers. Ideas find pathways through it, as if the absence of frantic motion leaves open channels for inspiration to flow. The remarkable thing is that nothing is hunted down or demanded. Instead, it is met halfway. What does it say about the nature of movement when the most fruitful things come to those who remain? Yet a subtle danger runs through these days, a siphon that drains focus without being noticed. It begins innocently, an idle glance, a brief comparison, a passing thought about where someone else stands. From there, it becomes a measure against one's own rhythm, eroding the quiet certainty that had been cultivated. Comparison dresses itself as observation but hides its nature as a thief, pulling attention from the work at hand into someone else's timeline. Once that leak begins, the steadiness that drew everything in starts to thin, and the anchor risks drifting with the tide it once resisted. Momentum can be undone in moments so brief they barely register. This stretch of time operates with exact precision, amplifying whatever is placed at its center, whether that's grounded focus or the undercurrent of comparison. Even a fleeting thought of inadequacy plants roots, shifting the entire emotional climate from expansion to contraction. The shift often comes disguised as curiosity, a glance at someone else's celebration, a moment of wondering why their pace feels faster. From there, the energy begins to tip away from gratitude and into a subtle erosion of trust in one's own unfolding. Each moment of comparison sends an unspoken message into the fabric of reality, that another's design is more authentic than one's own. And reality listens. Attention moves toward their story, their sequence, their pacing, leaving one's own inner blueprint unattended. In this way, destiny becomes blurred, not because it is lost, but because focus has been tuned to a frequency that belongs to someone else. It is impossible to step fully into a path while the gaze remains fixed on a horizon not meant to be crossed. This week, energy functions as a form of currency, finite, valuable, and deeply personal. It cannot be invested twice at the same time. Each thought spent on another's progress diverts resources from the work that matters most. The signal that had been clear begins to fragment, attracting situations that mirror scarcity rather than abundance. It's not punishment, it's simple resonance. Where attention goes, the field follows. The answer is not to speed up but to go deeper. It is found in leaning into the stillness beneath the noise, letting choices emerge from that grounded place rather than from the pull of urgency. While others race toward what looks like progress, the deeper movement comes from aligning action with clarity, even if it feels slower on the surface. It is a different kind of pace, one that builds permanence instead of spectacle. Many will shine with the kind of brilliance that draws the eye quickly. Statements made loudly, visions painted boldly, presence declared in grand strokes. Yet surface light can be unstable. It flickers when tested. Meanwhile, profound transformation often takes root quietly, visible only in subtle changes of how a person moves, speaks, and responds. Silence, in such cases, is not absence but density, an atmosphere in which the next stage of life is already forming. The days leading to August 8th are familiar to those who track these cycles, yet this year holds a sharper edge. It is not a symbolic opening to be admired, but a pressure point that presses directly against the origin of intent. It does not simply magnify desire, it examines its source, filtering out what is born from imitation or haste. In this way, the portal becomes not a stage for wishmaking, but a mirror that reflects the quality of the energy behind each request. Under this influence, the quality of inner alignment becomes more important than the volume of outward declaration. A desire rooted in clarity will expand effortlessly, while one built on insecurity will feel heavier under this amplified field. The difference will be felt almost immediately, an ease that signals readiness, or a friction that calls for re-evaluation. Which one has been showing up more often lately? This is why observation must turn inward. The quiet check-ins, the moments of self-inquiry, the honest recognition of what is fueling each action, these are the real catalysts of the week. Grand gestures may be satisfying, but they are rarely the true turning points. The most lasting changes often come from these understated recalibrations, repeated until the outer life cannot help but rearrange itself in response. Perhaps the real test here is not whether abundance can be called in, but whether the vessel is prepared to hold it without leaking focus, scattering energy, or abandoning the path for another's. In that sense, this week is not simply about gaining, it's about proving capable of keeping what arrives. And that proof is written not in wishes spoken, but in the way attention is spent in the smallest, quietest, most ordinary moments. When creation is seeded from the soil of fear, scarcity, or imitation, its growth is fragile, quick to wither when tested. But when vision rises from a place of true alignment, from the quiet core of identity that doesn't bend under pressure, its momentum becomes undeniable. In this span of days, intentions have an unusual way of fastening themselves to reality. Even the smallest focus begins to move swiftly along unseen currents, as though time itself is eager to deliver. It is worth asking, what is being set in motion right now without even realizing it? Yet, not every arrival is the answer it appears to be. Often, the first to show are shapes that resemble the real thing but lack its essence. They offer comfort, recognition, or the illusion of progress, yet something within signals the mismatch. These are diversions wearing the mask of fulfillment. The way forward depends less on speed than on discernment, on the ability to notice when the pattern before the eyes is only a reflection, not the source. True manifestation demands an anchor in honesty, not in the borrowed language of trends or the restless grasp of desperation. It comes from the part of the self that remains constant, even when circumstances shift wildly. Reality does not respond to want, it responds to resonance. And in a week like this, resonance is not about mood or aesthetic, it is an unshaken choice to match what is sought through being it, fully and without compromise. Every allowance, every fixation, every repeated word becomes more than a habit here, it becomes an invitation. This is the time to shape the field deliberately, to write with conviction, to speak as though it is already living, to see it vividly in the mind's eye, and to move as though it could not be otherwise. Precision outweighs perfection. It is the exactness of alignment that calls form into place. The 8th of August may feel like the crescendo, but its echo is just as potent. The full moon that follows is not a gentle fade-out, it's a surge, a second strike of energy hitting ground that has only just begun to shift. In that light, What was felt or envisioned the day before starts to crystallize. The air becomes charged with the possibility to lock it in before the tide turns again. This aftershock is less about adding new layers and more about solidifying what is already in play. The emotions stirred during the portal do not dissipate, they compress, becoming the foundation for what follows. To meet this moment fully is to recognize it as a hinge, one that determines whether the previous day's insight becomes a fleeting spark or the cornerstone of a lasting reality. And here lies the quiet challenge. It is easier to be swept away by the drama of the portal itself than to carry its essence into the day after. Yet the most significant work is often done once the noise fades, when the mind has space to translate vision into structure. How many times has transformation slipped away simply because it wasn't anchored before the energy moved on? There is a certain gravity to choices made under this sky. The alignment of events is not accidental, and neither is the timing of the test between the genuine and the almost. Accepting the near miss is a way of closing the door on what was meant to arrive. Waiting, in trust and precision, is how the right path becomes undeniable. Perhaps that is the real gift of this week, not the spectacle of its peak, but the rare clarity it offers to decide what belongs and what does not. Under this combination of pressure and possibility, the question isn't whether manifestation works, it's whether the vessel receiving it is ready to live with what it asks in return. The full moon of mid-August acts less like a lantern and more like a furnace, burning away what no longer belongs. It magnifies the most recent intentions and reflects them back with emotional intensity. When clarity guided the choices made during the portal, this lunar surge infuses them with power, accelerating their unfolding. When the days before were clouded with doubt or contradiction, it brings those distortions into sharp relief. The gift lies in that exposure, seeing what had been hidden, even if the revelation feels uncomfortably close. Its clearing power reaches beyond illumination, dissolving attachments that have quietly siphoned energy for far too long. When leaned into, the shift can feel almost immediate. A thought pattern dissolves, a lingering resentment loosens its grip, a mental conversation that had been on repeat finally falls silent. This is not about dismantling the loud, visible chaos. It's about releasing the subtle saboteurs, the unnoticed threads that have been weaving resistance into daily life. And once they fall away, the inner field feels cleaner, lighter, ready to carry something new without the drag of old weight. With the energetic field cleared, what was planted during the Lion's Gate begins to move as though drawn forward by an unseen current. It is not forced, the propulsion is already built into its design. The rhythm becomes one of balance, seed in the portal, release in the moon, until the self becomes the space where transformation takes root. In this way, the cycle completes, and the distance between present reality and the long-awaited future begins to close. Yet within these same days runs a quieter, less obvious assignment. Somewhere in the background, someone close, or perhaps only briefly connected, will be reaching a breaking point. It won't be the kind that demands public attention. The fracture will be internal, hidden from the casual observer. For those attuned, the shift will be felt before it's spoken, a faint tremor in their presence that suggests something has come undone. The signal may arrive in a brief exchange, an offhand message, an altered tone that seems almost unintentional. And in that moment, the deeper knowing will surface. This is the call to stand steady, to meet the moment without trying to control it. The task is not to rescue but to hold space without losing center, offering stability that does not collapse under another's weight. This kind of support doesn't seek credit or recognition. It works through stillness rather than intervention, through presence rather than persuasion. It may be nothing more than a pause in conversation, a simple acknowledgement, or a single sentence that lands in just the right place. The effect can be subtle yet profound, like striking a tuning fork and letting its vibration do the work without force. There is an unspoken responsibility in being energetically aligned. It extends beyond personal alignment into becoming a point of stability for others when their own compass fails. It is not about broadcasting wisdom or fixing the unfixable. It is about embodying coherence so deeply that others remember their own. Even if they never voice it, something shifts in their movement after the encounter. This is the invisible work of those tuned to the deeper rhythms, remaining rooted when others are pulled off course, carrying a frequency steady enough to ripple through without needing to be named. The moon's clearing light doesn't just serve the self, it turns the aligned presence into medicine for anyone who drifts into its field. And perhaps the truest sign of its effect is that it often goes unseen. Yet those who receive it walk away breathing a little deeper, as though they've just stepped back into themselves. At unexpected moments in the coming days, a quiet shift in the body will feel like a light being switched on from the inside. Fatigue will fall away, thought will sharpen, and a sudden ease will replace heaviness. It won't arrive during deliberate rest but in the aftermath of a choice that rings true, one that cuts through old reflexes. These flashes are brief, but their brevity is irrelevant. Their presence is the message. They are confirmations that alignment restores vitality in ways the physical system alone cannot explain. Such bursts are not accidents but signals from the deeper architecture of being. They arrive after a decision that refuses compromise, declining an old pattern, speaking truth where silence was once chosen, sending gratitude in place of blame, moving without drowning in hesitation. The energy that follows truth feels clean, immediate, and undeniable. Fatigue, by contrast, follows the weight of concession. One doesn't need to wait for depletion to access renewal. The key lies in noticing the exact moment integrity was honored. Each of these surges carries information. Pausing to ask what preceded them reveals a pattern, one that can be repeated intentionally. They are scattered across the week like coded blessings, visible only to those who move slowly enough to catch them. The more they are recognized, the less energy is wasted chasing momentum. Energy is not manufactured through force, it is unlocked through choices that refuse to betray the self. This same week brings a shift in the way the outer world mirrors the inner one. Sometimes the change will be subtle. A listener who once dismissed suddenly offers full attention, an acquaintance who underestimated begins to watch with quiet respect, or someone drifts away because their rhythm no longer matches. None of these outcomes are judgment, they are adjustments in resonance, the field reshaping itself to match the new frequency being carried. Yet the most striking change comes from within. There will be moments of realization that an old identity, the one built from outdated roles, borrowed rules, and second-hand beliefs, has fallen away. The sensation is less of becoming someone new and more of remembering a self that had always been present but obscured. When the inner identity evolves, the external world has no choice but to catch up. With that shift comes an unspoken invitation to step fully into the expanded space. The temptation may be to shrink, to soften the edges of the new presence so as not to disrupt familiar dynamics. But this week rewards the opposite. Speaking with clarity, moving with intention, allowing the transformation to be seen without apology. This isn't performance, it's recognition of a new level already earned. The energy at play doesn't just alter relationships, it accelerates influence. Credibility sharpens without having to be announced, and presence expands before any action is taken. The change is perceptible in the way others respond, whether with deference, curiosity, or even discomfort. These reactions are not personal, they are simply reflections of a recalibrated field. There is a choice in how to meet this. One path pretends nothing has shifted, forcing the self back into a shape that no longer fits. The other steps through the invisible doorway with steadiness, claiming the space without turning it into spectacle. Perception, after all, is not just how others see, it is a living bridge between potential and embodiment. Perhaps the deeper question is whether the portal of perception will be walked through or left waiting. The days ahead are not simply about change, they are about recognizing the moment when the inner truth aligns with the outer reflection, and deciding to inhabit that alignment without hesitation. In that decision, the charge returns, the influence grows, and the future begins to unfold in real time. The days ahead carry no interest in measured pacing or careful waiting. They press for a choice, to disrupt the framework, or to remain enclosed within it. Passive observation has lost its usefulness. Drifting with events now risks fading into irrelevance. Hesitation lets the moment pass untouched, and no invitation will arrive to take its place. The surrounding field is attuned to signs of conviction, movement, and presence, indifference to flaw or formality, while indifference to action is met with silence. Every structure, both internal and external, leans toward authenticity or pulls away from it. Conversations, commitments, and environments no longer remain neutral. Each is either drawing the future closer or preserving a past that has already outlived its truth. The coming days will make clear which direction the current is flowing. Pretense holds no power here. Either there is a full showing of integrity, or the self dissolves into the background of its own story. This calls for a kind of devotion to self-preservation that is not rooted in ego but in necessity. Sacred selfishness is the deliberate act of protecting the energy the greater design requires to work through a life. It does not exclude compassion for others, it simply refuses to trade the core self for their comfort. The distinction is subtle yet absolute. One sustains life, the other drains it. In this space, presence becomes acceleration. Showing up without mask or mimicry quickens the reordering of events around it. The window now open does not search for those who wait. It chooses those who move, who speak as though the next chapter is already listening. This is no season for echoing borrowed truths. It is the moment to carry the resonance of one's own. The real measure is in imagining life already aligned with its highest form and acting from that place now. What decisions fall naturally into place from that perspective? Which ties dissolve without resistance? The subtle observers, seen and unseen, are not waiting to grant approval. The approval is already in motion for those willing to treat the present as the signal it is. Inaction here leads to invisibility. The potential of these days cannot be mapped in thought alone. It must be translated into visible choice. Sending the message, speaking the line, moving in the direction that feels certain even before certainty is earned. These are the acts that draw the field closer. Readiness is not a prerequisite. Decision is. Merely surviving this week or quietly reflecting on it afterward will not meet the moment. What matters is the interruption of old patterns in real time, with clarity so unmistakable that the life surrounding it must reshape itself in response. This span is not here to comfort, it is here to witness. The question remains, will the self step forward to be seen? If the exchange here has resonated, further conversation awaits. Support through subscribing allows more of this work to reach those who are ready to receive it. Shared reflections and stories carry the current forward. Until the next crossing of paths, hold steady to what feels essential, and keep choosing from the place that refuses to wait for permission.